promotion in Washington. Mark Bloomfield, do you share President Obama's confidence that America always will be a AAA country?
I think I do. I think if you look at the ability of a country to grow through innovation and flexibility, I think the United States still has that. And I would also say, to quote the dictum of the late economist Paul Samuelson, the stock market has predicted 9 of the last 5 recessions.
So do you think the stock markets are behaving rationally or irrationally in all this?
If I knew whether they were behaving rationally or irrationally, I would not be on your program. I'd be at some fancy island, smiling with my great wealth and happiness.
There would certainly be money to be made. Why are they so rattled, though?
I think they're rattled for a variety of reasons, short-term and long-term. I think in the short term, they're rattled because the lack of economic growth, beginning in the United States. We just are not growing. And I think that is true also around the world. Take, for example, countries like China and Japan. They're depending on the United States exports to grow. So that is one factor. The second factor is long-term concern about debt. Our debt is very, very high. That of Europe, of course, is very, very high. And tying both together is the fundamental questions whether democracies can really deal with difficult economic choices. And I think that's what the market is saying to us.
I want to ask you a bit about that in just a moment. But first on this issue of debt and growth, because the two things are linked. Are the markets asking for greater action to cut deficits around the world? And if so, aren't they asking for policies that, in the view of many economists, may actually damage growth?
Well, I think you're correct. If you tighten up too much or do what the UK has done well, which is fiscal constraint, you damage the ability of the economy to grow in the short term. So it is a very, very tricky balance. But there are ways to bell the cat. For example, I'm speaking from the perspective of the business community, putting a pause of new government regulation, providing some certainty in government policies. I think abandoning the rapid decision to engage perhaps in another stimulus package. I think those would help us grow in the short term. In the long run, I think the business communities which are sitting in all this cash would find some confidence and be willing to invest if they knew that our long-term financial system situation could be bettered through deficit reduction. Now, there is not an agreement about policies. I think the president is right. It is a political problem, but it is also a question of policies.
And I'm not sorry to interrupt you. We haven't got much time. And on that political problem, do you have confidence in politicians in Washington to actually come up with a proper solution?
Yes, I do. There are two ways to deal with the fundamental problems. One is political leadership, or the other is a market reaction. Now, we had a big market reaction, and just like in 2008, that may cause the politicians to come up with some compromise and some good economic policy.